Hi, everybody, and welcome back to another installment of Mindful Marathon Conversations. I am Coach Michelle Quirk. I am a pediatrician, a run coach, and founder of Mindful Marathon, where I help make running easy and fun for busy professionals. And today I have a very special guest with me. I have with me Christopher Heimerman. He is a journalist, a recovering alcoholic, a marathoner, an author, a writer, a speaker, a podcaster, so many things, and an all-around inspiring human. He is the founder of 40,000 Steps, where he is stamping out stigma surrounding mental illness and addiction. And I'm very excited to have him here with us on Mindful Marathon Conversations. So welcome.
Oh, thank you. It's great to be here. And you left out head case. I think
Oh, no.
that's my main title, I would say. It's keeping all the plates spinning. I'm a whirling dervish.
A whirling dervish. I love that. So I want to hear all the things, but tell us maybe to start a little bit about yourself and how running fit into your life maybe before 2 years ago.
Yeah, you bet. I was kind of a late, I always specify a later bloomer. I don't like to say late bloomer. And I think that you could probably appreciate that because like I ran 1 year of cross country in high school and it didn't speak to me at that time. It was first when I was living in Monroe, Wisconsin as a sports editor. I was 26 and I'm living in this town of 10,843 people. I'm lonely, I'm bored. And so I start running on occasion and it finally spoke to me. I had run a 5K in college and I enjoyed it. But it was really when I met my wife, which was at that job at the newspaper, that we started sort of feeding off of each other. We got into running. We started doing 5Ks, then they became 10Ks. And eventually it led to half marathon with the first one of those was in 2011 and then marathons. And I had done 4 of them. And the latest one I was in the middle of training for. And to kind of cut to the chase a little bit with my story, I was a raging alcoholic between like 7 a.m. and 7 p.m. I would drink my way through the workday and then, usually I would muscle myself out of bed at like 5 or 5:30 in the morning. I'd go for my training run and then, so I'd kind of sweat out the previous day. Mm-hmm. And then I'd, be right back on, the vicious cycle. And like every Sunday I'd go for my long runs and it could be anywhere between 10 and like we were 4 weeks out from the marathon when I kind of cracked up. Not even 2.5, 3 weeks. So I was getting into like the 15, 16, 17 mile runs. Like I was approaching my taper. And so every Sunday we'd go for these long runs and I would feel like, okay, I was capable of doing that. I'm fine now. Like I've beaten this thing. I've sweated everything out. This is going to be the week that it sticks. And it, by noon the next day, I would be right back in it. So finally, on March 22nd, I cracked up and I walked out of the office. I was the editor of the local newspaper and went to the ER, leveled with my wife the next morning. And she knew a lot, not everything. She had found the empties and stuff like that. But finally I was just like, honey, I can't go back to that job. It's killing me. I need to get help. I need to go to treatment. She said, absolutely, you're not going back there. We're going to get you the help you need. And the weight of the world just came off my shoulders. So spent the weekend reaching out to family and friends, putting my cards on the table and receiving nothing but love and support, which was surprising because I had spent years just self-flagellating, just beating the snot out of myself for becoming this guy I didn't recognize anymore. Yeah. So for people to say, I love you and we're going to get you the help that you need was tremendous. So finally that Monday morning, I complete the intake over the phone and we get me into treatment, check me into rehab at Gateway Foundation in Aurora. And so while I'm there and I'm doing all the work on, here and here, I continue to do my training runs in the morning. And there came a point in treatment where the guy who runs the residential units kind of pulled me aside and he was like, hey, we can't have you running every morning. And he had a medical point, because it's like when you stop drinking 15, 16, 17 beers a day, like you have to be concerned about the risk of seizure, any number of medical emergencies that can happen.
Yeah.
So like every other day I'd keep doing my training runs. I know. And I come out of rehab on a Friday and the following morning run my 5th marathon.
Amazing. Amazing. Okay, wait, I want to hear more about the marathon, but I have to go back and just think about the fact that you were doing long runs through that whole period of time. How did you manage to like get yourself out of bed and keep training? Like clearly the marathon goal was there for you. It was very strong.
Oh yeah. Yeah. I mean, I'm a very driven person. I'm a very goal-oriented person. I'm a competitive person. So on the mornings when I had my runs, it was kind of the same thing where it's like, if I can just get myself to the gym and just sweat it out, I'm going to give myself a puncher's chance. And there was a point in December of 2018 when I did get my butt out of bed and I was on the way to the gym and I said, no, I was like, I'm done. I am going to the hospital because I basically was having a panic attack. It was like, this has to stop. So I got myself to the hospital and it was so wild that while I was there, like I see the social worker and they bring me the materials for treatment and stuff. And they say, this could be a pathway for you.
Yeah.
And I take them and I'm like, I consider it. And it's like, no, I can't. Like, I can't take off a month of work and just disappear and then try to, resume my life. I'm stuck in this job. This is it for me. Eventually I just have to white knuckle it and get through this thing on my own. So when I went to the ER 3 months after that, I was in the exact same room. And it was so eerie. And here's something that's really messed up. And I know it's the case here in Illinois. I'm not sure about elsewhere, but they are not able to transfer you from the hospital straight into treatment, which is maddening. It's like, here you have this person who's finally willing to surrender and get help. And you're gonna keep putting that onus on them that they have to leave here and then pick up the phone and call somebody. I shudder to think of the millions of people who didn't keep that momentum going and pick up the phone.
Yeah, for sure.
So, but yeah, I mean, in terms of training, it was just like, there was a certain amount of justification that it's like, if I can keep training, then, I mean, you can normalize anything.
It's very true.
And that's how I continued to be a high functioning alcoholic. Like I was the highest functioning alcoholic I've ever met.
Yeah, it sounds like it. And I know many people can relate to that feeling of being stuck, no matter what it is in your job or with whatever people are struggling with. But yeah, I mean, I feel very thankful that you reached out for help and you said enough is enough, just thank God for that.
Yeah, me too. And I appreciate that because, and I mean, that's exactly why I do the advocacy, right? Is to try to give people the strength, the place to identify. And I am happy to share my story and to have folks on, like I'm having a woman on last week who really she would lose days at a time drinking and drugging. Yes, I want to share those stories because people identify with them.
Yeah.
But ultimately, I won't have somebody on who just wants to sit in that. It has to be somebody who's willing to say, I flipped the script and I'm so happy now. Here are the benefits of giving it up and getting help, because that's where it has to go, or it's not productive. The day that I stopped living in that junk and punishing myself for it, and I decided I was going to run towards something great rather than running from, all of the damage I'd done. The day that I flipped that mindset, it became much, much easier to stay sober.
I love that. And so, okay, so you're training, you're training while you're in rehab, and then you come out and you're going to run this marathon 2 days later, the day after.
The day after,
The
yeah.
day after.
Less than 24 hours after I was discharged.
Now I have heard the story but you have to just tell us a little bit about this marathon. I feel like you could have decided not to do that. You had very many reasons why we could have given you a pass on letting go of that race.
Yeah.
But you got out of bed that morning and you got to the start line. Tell us about that.
That part was easy, honestly, getting up and running the race. I mean, that's what I'd been looking forward to.
Yes.
And I slept this was the best that I had slept the night before a race in my life because I had never been thinking that clearly leading into a race.
Yeah.
And frankly, I had never gone through the night before a race without having a couple of drinks, which we all know what alcohol does to our sleep, right?
Yes.
So yeah, no, we get up, I'm on fire, I'm excited. And of course I go out way too fast, which
Yeah.
we all have that problem. And then compile on that it's like, I'm just happy to be alive and to be sober.
Yes.
So yeah, I go out a little bit too fast, but not like brutally too fast. And I get to 7.83 because I remember looking at my Fitbit. 7.83 miles in, I have like this lightning bolt of pain just screaming through my left calf. And I'm like, I've never really had to deal with cramps.
Mm-hmm.
But it was immediately like, that's got to be a cramp. Like I didn't pull something. It's like, that's a cramp. So I hit the medical tent, which is something I'd never done before, never needed to really. And it was funny. I get into the tent and there's two youngsters working in there and they're very casual. And I'm so neurotic that I'm like, fix me. I need to get back out there because I'm not losing my PR to a cramp. Like this is my day. Get on my level.
I love it. I think every runner can relate to that.
Yeah. So they give me a couple of little electrolyte wafers and dude rubs out my calf and shows me how I can do it. When it acts up again. So I'm thinking, okay, I hope that doesn't come in handy, but hopefully it's a while from now. I get back out there. I'm like 500 meters down the road and it starts acting up again. I'm just like, okay, this is what it's going to be. You can quit. Again, you said it before. It's like, I have the out. I can quit if I want to. The ultimate out, and I think we've all dealt with this when the race puts us in this position, was you get to, for folks who aren't familiar with Milwaukee, most folks know what Marquette is, Marquette University. Well, you're going up Wisconsin Avenue, and by up, I mean uphill. Like it's a steep hill climb for about a mile or so. Excuse me. And you get to the half marathon turnaround and you're at like mile 12. And I'm like, my calf is bothering me. I have every excuse in the world to just punk out, turn around, run the mile and call it a day. And boy, that's tough. But this was, I mean, the transformation that I had gone through over the past couple of weeks, like if I hadn't had that, I might have punked out. Yeah. And instead it was like, think about everything that's brought me here. It's like, I'm going to finish this marathon if I have to like lop off my leg and carry it with me.
Yes.
So
I love that mindset shift.
Totally. And shortly thereafter, and now I remember all this so vividly, A, because it was significant, and B, because I wrote the memoir, and like, so all this stuff is like, all these details are great. My earbud starts wigging out and it's cold. It's like 45 degrees and it's damp and misting and stuff like that. And it's windy. So my earbud starts, clipping out. And so I'm doing the thing where I'm taking out one and like only having one in. So it turned out that the right one was working. But the moment I put the left one in, everything shut down. And so I'm like, and I'm trying to like take them out and let them dry off like from the sweat. Maybe that'll work. And it's just not working. So I ended up, this visual is priceless and there's no way I'm going to do it justice. But I end up like taking the bunk left earbud, and I'm not just going to have it like dangling and flapping around. So I take it and I string it around my neck and like anchor it in my shirt so that it can't move. but not too tight because you don't want to pull out the right one. And so I crack this code and I'm running like this and I'm smiling maniacally because it's like, oh, I figured it out. And I'm like, I had to look crazy, like this guy with an earbud around his neck, the cord. Um, but so yeah, and it was brutal because like my fingers were numb. But figured it out. And it turned out to be such a blessing in disguise because I actually got to listen to what was going on around me. And I know you're gonna love this, out of my left ear.
Yes.
So I had my music.
Mhm.
I had that I could hear, the peanut galleries. And I could hear
Cheering.
everything. Everything. Yes.
Yeah.
Um, I think there's significant times in that marathon. One that stands out for me was you get like 2/3 of the way through the race and you do the out and backs, where it's like you go 3/4 of a mile out into a residential neighborhood, turn around and go back the other way. And there's two of those. And here, I'm babbling a lot. How do you feel about those as a runner?
A little bit boring. Yeah. Like out and back, you cover the same territory. And also it can be, I mean, you can look at it two ways. One, a little disheartening because there's all these people ahead of you that you're seeing already coming back.
Yes.
Or you can think like, oh, that's a lot of people I could high five on the other side. But
Yes. Yes. No, you hit it. That's exactly it. Because in years past, I would have been like, oh man, I am just not as fast as I'd like to be. I want to be as fast as those people.
yes.
Instead, this time, like I'm rooting for them. I am high-fiving them. And it was aspirational. And so then you get like to the very pivot part of the race and you turn around, and then you're going the other way. And then you're the elite runners in the
There
eyes
you go.
of those other folks.
That's right.
And I think that was even more significant because like when I saw people like struggling and just doing something they'd never done before,
Mhm.
or maybe struggling in a way they'd never struggled before, it fed my soul so much to root for them.
Mhm.
And I saw my wife, Kayla, coming in that direction. She was a few minutes behind. And I just see her and I'm just screaming. I'm like, honey, I love you so much. You're doing so great. High five her. I get past her and I just start sobbing. Um, because I had let her down so many times. And if you're not a runner, you probably don't completely get this, but I decided in that moment that in some small way, I was not going to let her down that day.
Mhm.
That I was going to run the very best race that I could. And I was going to ride that after the race and be the husband, the ever present dad that I owe it to her to be.
Yeah. No, I love that. I love that. I think I took with me to my first marathon start line really the memory of my dad. So I lost my dad to cancer about 9 years ago now, but I thought, I had those times too. Everybody does, right? When your inner critic comes out and just says to you, maybe it's not why don't you just quit, but why are you even doing this? And comes out at the start line like, who the heck do you think you are running a marathon?
Oh, wow.
That's it for
Yeah.
me.
Yeah.
And just I find that, I don't know, in those moments, like I pinned a picture of my dad and I to the back of my race bib. And that was really it. Like I just decided when I crossed the start line, like I'm going to finish it, even if I have to walk the whole thing, but but I'm doing it for him. I'm doing it for me. But yeah, it's amazing what you can kind of tell your mind to focus on and change something in a moment when you have all those negative voices on one shoulder, but the positive voice in the other ear. And you
Yeah.
know,
I describe it in the memoir as, the angel on one shoulder, the devil
yeah,
on the other. Was
yeah.
was your dad a runner at all?
He and my mom were very active. They were brisk walkers. I wouldn't say runners. My dad was a wrestling coach, actually, way
Okay.
back.
So for him, running was punishment back then.
Correct, yes. But yeah, I imagine we started running after he passed. And I think, how amazing. I think that I could have kind of roped him into the first half marathon with my mom and I and my mother-in-law, the one that we all did together. I think he would have definitely done it.
Yeah. Was he pretty competitive? Like, obviously.
Yeah. I think we all are in this Quirk family. Yeah.
Well, that's so cool. And you spoke to it before. It's sort of that imposter syndrome that a lot of us have in a marathon. It's like, who do I think I am that I can do this? And why? And then eventually it's like, why am I putting myself through this? And that's kind of where I got around like mile 17, 18, 19. Like, one of the things we learn in treatment is this concept of halt, where, as you protect your sobriety, you never want to get too hungry, angry, lonely, or tired. Mm-hmm. And so multiple times, especially over those last 10 miles or so, like I did the inventory, like the checklist. It's like, am I too hungry? And it's like, I'm running a marathon. I'm always going to be hungry. And I'm taking my little goo packets as often as I'm supposed to. Nothing I can do about that. The angry thing, it's like multiple times during that race, I made a point of stopping being angry at myself for the past. And like the only anger I had was like toward my calf.
Yes. Well, that's fair.
Well, and in years past, I might have been like, hey, God, why are you doing this to me? Like this was supposed to be my day. Mm-hmm. And instead it was just like, okay, this is what it is. And it's like, I see what you're doing. You're giving me reasons to give up. Yeah. So it's going to be even more satisfying. The big one for me was the loneliness, mm-hmm. because when I drank to be lonely, to withdraw, to not deal with my emotions. And so I did it alone, parked on the side of the road in the countryside. There's a cemetery near the newspaper where I worked, just east of it, like about a mile, 2 miles away. And it's this tiny little cemetery, and you can like drive through the path, and like nobody was ever there. So I would park back there, and I would just sit in my car and just and drink for half an hour at a time. And so, yeah, loneliness, a real thing. And when you get into mile 19 or 20 of a marathon and you're hitting that wall, like the peanut galleries become much more sparse because all those folks have gone to the finish line. You're no longer running, with small clumps of people either, because people start to separate. Mm-hmm. And I'm laughing because there was this woman in front of me, like constantly, like a quarter of a mile ahead of me. And I remember her emerald green striped socks. And in the last couple of miles, as I was feeling lonely, like I was doing a lot of the "come on, guy" and like saying that stuff out loud to myself. Mm-hmm. And I know I kept freaking her out. So she'd look over her shoulder like, what is with this dude?
Anything to keep going, though.
No doubt.
Fine.
And, as I got closer to downtown, I started seeing the old bars that we'd hang out with until bar closed. And, I was making my peace with it. And that it was like, I don't have to go into those places anymore. That like, I no longer have to hang out there all night, spend, so much money, wake up the next morning feeling miserable, having no idea what went down there. So I was making peace with that. And, I was at like mile 25 and a half or so. And over those last few miles, I'm sure other runners have done this, where it's like, I started like negotiating my goals. Because there was a point where 3:45 was possible. Mm-hmm. And that went away around the half marathon mark. It was like, okay, if I can hit 3:50, I'm going to be stoked. Mm-hmm. And it was around like mile 22, 23, where it was like, boy, if I can hang with this, maybe 3:55 is possible. And I got to like mile 25 and a half. It's like, there's no way I'm going to hit 3:55. Yeah, I'm going to crack 4 hours. Like that was my goal. My previous PR was 4:07. So it's like, if I can crack 4 hours, I will be ecstatic.
Yes.
And a song came on, and I can't say it on here because There's a curse word in the band name.
Okay.
So you'll have to order the book when it's available.
Okay.
But it got me going. And there's this buildup in the song. And I started, sort of shifting the gears back into third gear and fourth gear. And so you're winding through downtown Milwaukee and you take a left onto Juneau to come back across the bridge of the Milwaukee River and run toward Fiserv Forum, the home of your Milwaukee Bucks. And as I'm crossing the bridge, there are these 3 bars down there. And one of them is Harp, where we hung out a lot. Mm-hmm. And I looked at it and I was like, okay. I was like, this is my time. There's a quarter of a mile left, maybe a fifth of a mile left. I was like, I'm going to allow myself to get angry. I'm going to allow myself to take this personally. And I just opened the throttle somehow. And, we've all gone down that home stretch where it's like, I'm either going to collapse, I'm going to throw up, something bad is going to happen. I can't keep it up. Mm-hmm. And so I have all those thoughts just screaming at me. It's like, you should just give up. You're just, you're still just a lousy drunk. You're just going to let people down. And I just kept going and pushing it. And I pushed it all the way through the timing pads. And I finished in 3:55 flat.
It's amazing. I love hearing it.
And I love
talking. That's a crazy PR too, by the way. Congratulations.
Thank you. And what's wild now is, and I mean, this isn't me like popping my shoulder out of socket, patting myself on the back. I could shatter that now because like I am in the greatest shape of my life. Like if anybody is, sober curious, I can tell you that the sleep and the physical fitness and just looking at yourself in the mirror and seeing a twinkle in your eye makes it all worth it.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, that's amazing. Yeah, that negotiating with yourself happens a lot as a runner, especially in a long race.
Yeah.
I call it run math, which I'm not very good at in the moment, but
I love run math.
And you're like, well, am I going to beat this number? If I can just keep this up, but if that goes away, you just reevaluate the goals, in the moment. It's totally fine.
Yeah. Which, I mad respect to the people who can run negative splits for a marathon. That's crazy to me.
Yeah.
So I caught up with my family afterward. I hugged my buddy, Johnny Mack, who was my one non-relative who visited me in treatment. He was the guy who helped me remember that I had value. He and I were colleagues as journalists, and he comes in and we're talking, and he was pitching the idea of doing a podcast when I got out. Mm-hmm. And to me, that just like, it was just like, okay, my buddy is not just here, helping me with my pity party. He was like, you have value. Let's do a podcast together, which that never came to fruition, but that's beside the point. So I hugged him. When I hugged my dad, like ever since he figured out how to use an SLR camera, he just eternally has the camera around his neck. So I hugged him and I just remember saying to him, I was like, Dad, I'm still here. Like, look what I can still do. And immediately I was brought down to earth by my kids who are tugging on my sleeve and saying, where's mommy? I'm cold and I want to go. To which I said, don't you dare say anything like that when we see your mother. It's like, get it all out
right now
and say it to me.
Oh man.
So
no, it's an amazing story. Well, okay. So you told us a little bit. Tell us more about 40,000 steps.
Sure.
And where that's going.
Well, the afternoon after the marathon, I sat down and I wrote my memoir. One of the things I learned in treatment is the importance of documenting your feelings, which for me is journaling. Mm-hmm. And so I sat down to journal and it immediately hit me. It's like, I have the God-given talent and I have the story. I need to write a memoir. And it took me, to write the initial draft, it took maybe like 5 or 6 months, mm-hmm. which was amazing. And then I hired a brilliant editor, Claire Buchanan. She's a morning edition producer for NPR. Yeah. So she, she graciously took the job and did a tremendous job with the book. I enlisted a former colleague who was one of my one of my most prolific drinking buddies. I enlisted him to help me with edits. And he, again, so graciously went through the whole thing and gave me notes.
Mhm.
Sorry.
Oh, you're okay.
And and so then I have this memoir,
Mhm.
and I pitch it to like 100 agents, and the prevailing response, well, first off, you get a lot of form responses,
Okay.
but the couple of people who gave me like individualized, clearly like non boilerplate responses, they were like, this is awesome, it's just not a good fit right now. And one of them, I wrote back and I was like, hey, can you tell me why? And she said, look, I'll level with you. You don't have a platform. Like, you don't have the thousands of Instagram followers and Twitter followers, which is not my jam.
Yeah.
I like, that's bad for my mental health to like
Mhm.
chase affirmation on social media. But she was like, look, we'll take a crappy writer with a huge platform, and we'll give them a book deal because we'll just assign a writer to it and make it a good book. So I was like, okay, well, it was very disheartening. It was heartbreaking. But then, like, it was like, okay, so what do we do about this? It was like, well, I've always wanted to do a podcast.
Mhm.
So it's like, okay, well, let's do a live stream show, strip the audio from it, and turn it into a podcast. So we've got these multiple points of contact. And it was, it's been a blast. We just took sort of, okay, we've been doing this for a few months, what's working and what isn't.
Mhm.
We were only able to do the show like every other week because so much went into the live stream show, coordinating schedules.
Yeah.
So I was like, let's do away with the live stream show, because now I do morning Instagram talks.
Which are great.
I love them. And so we have the live component, and I interview people on there every Thursday morning, which that's at 40,000 __ steps on Instagram. I need to have a negotiation with the whoever has 40,000 _ steps, but it's a whole other conversation.
I'll put the link in the description here too.
Thank you.
Yes.
And but it was like, let's just zero in on the podcast. So now I'm doing it weekly because I'm not worrying about the other stuff. And, I invested in the gear, like what you're seeing here. This is a new investment. So that, we can really make the audio as sharp as possible.
Yeah.
But as you know, and any podcast or consumer knows, content is king.
Mm-hmm.
And I am spoiled in that. And here's where, like, if you ask people for help or to be part of something and you're excited about it, they're going to get into it. Like, I have this list of people who are going to come on the show. That Corey Harrington episode that dropped on April 6th is everything.
Mm-hmm. So
Corey
good.
was in the throes of opiate addiction for 10 years. He just completed an Ironman in November when he was about 2.5 years clear of addiction. And his story just breaks my heart and puts it right back together again. And it did everything for me personally. But frankly, on a pragmatic level, that episode is so damn good, I will humbly submit, that now it's a recruiting tool.
Mm-hmm.
I turned around and I sent that episode to Katra Corbett. Have you ever heard of her?
No.
She was a meth addict who now has completed like more than 100 races, including like a couple of 200 milers.
Yeah. Yeah.
She's kind of a rock star in the recovery trail racing community.
Mm-hmm.
I sent it to her and she's like, this is great. I'd love to be on your pod. And I was like, really?
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well,
so it's
I can't wait to read the book. I can't wait to read the book.
I know. And yeah. And I'm excited to publish it. And I don't want to self-publish because I know that in time, when the time is right, the right agent is going to pick it up. And frankly, like, that's where I don't want like some fly by night publisher just picking it up and just, pushing it through. It's like,
yeah,
I'm going to be interviewing them as well. Like I want the right fit.
I love
So
that.
that's
Yeah, well,
coming.
in the meantime, we're sharing your story, and we're going to bring all of these people to your podcast so that they can hear all of the wonderful stuff you're doing.
That's wonderful. That's wonderful. And I always say that like the reason I'm doing this is to connect with folks. So I mean, when you find the podcast, which is everywhere, you listen to your podcasts, you're going to find all the information to get in touch with me. But to cut to the chase, it's like if you are somebody who's living through addiction, if you're wrestling with mental illness, which was really the root of my problem, I urge you, first off, Google, counseling, evaluations. Like you can just type in like alcohol evaluation and you're going to find a place where you can, have a conversation and find out the best path to recovery. But if I can help you, it's simple. It's 40,000 steps at gmail.com. And I would be humbled to offer whatever advice I can.
Love it. And your Instagram every day is wonderful too. So everybody check them out on Instagram. Also, I signed up for your little newsletter, which I love too.
Oh, good.
Yeah, it's great. On the website.
Yeah, 40,000steps.wordpress.com. Newsletter's free. Keeps you up to speed on who's been on the show, who's coming up on the show. I'm so glad you like the IGTV videos because I love doing them.
Yeah, they're fun.
Yeah, thanks. And you were on one.
I was. It was
folks
fun.
who check it out. Scroll down in my feed, and you were gracious enough to come on. And
oh no, thank you.
Well, it's a mutual admiration society that we have here.
That's right.
Where what I love about what you're doing, like we've discussed, is that whether people want mindfulness or if they want to get into their first 5K, either way, they're right.
Yeah. Yes.
And either way, like you are the person to help them out. So I love what you're doing as well.
Oh, I appreciate that. And I love your story.
Thanks. I do too.
Yes. And it needs to be shared.
That's everything, is that I do too now. Like I know that there's probably a lot of folks who identify with the imposter syndrome and the reluctancy to accept love, and the reluctancy to admit that they're worthy of love and that they're worthy of success. It's always been a hang up for me. So the fact that I can sit here and share this story and that you voice that you love it too. It's, I don't know, what a lucky man he was.
Yes. Oh, I love it. All right, everybody. If you are a newer runner or a runner who hasn't run in a while, I would love to help you get back into it or start in the sport. And I'll leave the link below. You can schedule a call with me. I'd love to chat with you, or just send me a message as well. So yeah, thank you all for listening and for joining us. And make sure you like this and share it with someone who would really be inspired by listening. All right. Thanks so much.